The meeting room was cold and quiet. Jake Morrison stood with his arms behind his back, watching the screen on the wall. Admiral Patricia Collins was reading from a document, and her voice filled the empty space between them. "All guns are now banned," she said. "No bullets, no railguns, no missiles, nothing that shoots metal at the enemy." Jake felt his stomach drop. Around him, other soldiers started talking loudly. Some were angry. Others looked confused. Lieutenant Kyle Henderson hit the table with his fist. "This is crazy," Kyle shouted. "The Kralliks still have their plasma weapons. What are we supposed to use? Our words?" Jake stayed quiet. His mind was already working. The Galactic Council had made this new rule just yesterday. They said human weapons were too violent and needed to be stopped. But Jake knew the truth. Humans were winning too many battles, and the older alien races did not like it. For years, humans had used guns and railguns to fight in space. These weapons were simple, but deadly. A piece of metal moving fast enough could punch through any armor. The aliens had energy shields and plasma cannons, but human projectiles were cheap and effective. Now the Council wanted to take that advantage away. Captain Linda Hayes stood up. She was in charge of the ship, called the Endeavor. Her face looked tired and worried. "Meeting dismissed," she said. "Everyone except Morrison." The other soldiers left the room. Some were still complaining as they walked out. Jake stayed where he was. When the door closed, Linda looked at him for a long moment. "Sit down, Jake," she said. He pulled out a chair and sat. Linda pushed a data pad across the table toward him. "You are being moved to a new assignment," she told him. "Special operations. They need someone who can think in different ways." Jake picked up the data pad and started reading. His eyebrows went up. "The Kralliks are moving ships near our colonies," Linda continued. "They think we are weak now. They want to test us. Command needs ideas that do not break the new rules." Jake kept reading. The mission details were light, but he could see what they wanted. Someone had to find a way to fight without guns. "They banned projectiles," Jake said slowly. "They did not ban everything else." Linda smiled just a little. "Exactly. That is why I recommended you. You grew up on Earth, right? Before space travel?" "Yes, ma'am. Montana. Small town. We hunted and fished. Then you know how to use other tools that are not guns." Jake nodded. His grandfather had taught him many things. How to track animals. How to survive in the wild. How to use a knife for hunting and protection. Back then, it was just tradition. Now it might save lives. "How much freedom do I have?" Jake asked. "As much as you need," Linda said. "But stay inside the rules. The Council is watching us closely now." Jake stood up. He felt something he had not felt in months. Hope. Maybe excitement. "When do I start?" "Right now. There is a ship waiting to take you to Firebase Delta. You will have 1 week to prepare. Then, you go after the Kralliks." Jake took the data pad and walked toward the door. Before he left, Linda called his name. "Morrison," she said. "Be careful. The Kralliks are not stupid. They will not expect what you are planning. But if they catch you, there will be no backup. No rescue mission." "Understood, ma'am." He left the room and headed for the docking bay. His mind was already filling with ideas. Knives. Blades. Close combat. The Kralliks were big and strong, but they relied on their technology. They fought from far away with plasma and energy weapons. Nobody ever got close to them in battle. That was going to change. 3 hours later, Jake was on a small transport ship, heading toward Firebase Delta. The base was on a colony planet called New Portland. It was far from the main human worlds, close to where the Kralliks were gathering their fleet. Jake spent the flight reading everything he could find about Kralliks' combat tactics. Their armor was thick and could stop most energy weapons. Their shields protected them from explosions, but their suits had joints and gaps, places where armor plates connected, places where a sharp blade could slip through. He also read about Krallik's psychology. They were proud warriors who believed in honor and strength. They thought hand-to-hand combat was beneath them. Primitive. Dirty. That pride would be their weakness. When the transport landed at Firebase Delta, Sergeant Amy Cooper was waiting for him. She was young, but had serious eyes. She saluted when Jake stepped off the ship. "Commander Morrison," she said. "Welcome to Delta Base. I am your quartermaster. Whatever you need, I will get it for you." "Good," Jake said. "Because I need something unusual." They walked through the base together. It was small. Just a few buildings and a landing pad. About 200 soldiers were stationed here, mostly watching for Krallik's activity. Jake led Amy to the armory. It was a long room filled with weapons and equipment. Energy rifles hung on the walls. Ammunition boxes were stacked in the corners. But Jake walked past all of it. "Show me your knives," he said. Amy looked confused. "Knives, sir?" "Yes, combat knives, throwing knives, any kind of blade you have." She led him to a storage locker in the back. Inside were maybe a dozen knives. Most were simple utility tools. A few were combat knives that soldiers carried as backup weapons. "This is everything?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir. We do not use knives much anymore. Not since energy weapons became standard." Jake picked up one of the combat knives. It was heavy and well made. The blade was about 8 inches long. He tested the balance by tossing it lightly in his hand. "I need more," he said. "Many more. Different types, different sizes. Can you get them?" "I can request them from supply," Amy said. "But it might take a few days. And I will need to explain why we need so many knives." 5 days had passed since Jake arrived at Firebase Delta. The knives had come from supply, and now they covered a large table in the training room. Jake stood over them, like a general studying a battlefield map. There were throwing knives with perfect balance, combat knives with serrated edges, small blades that could hide in a boot or sleeve, larger blades that could cut through tough materials. Each one had a purpose. Amy Cooper walked into the room carrying a box. She set it down next to the table. "That is the last of them, sir," she said. 47 knives. As requested. Supply was very confused. Jake picked up a thin throwing knife. It was light and sharp. He turned it over in his hands, checking every detail. "Good work, Sergeant. Now I need something else." "What is that, sir?" "A team. 4 people. Maybe 5. I need soldiers who can learn fast and keep secrets." Amy thought for a moment. "I might have some names." "What kind of skills are you looking for?" "Close combat, zero gravity training, technical skills, medical training, people who can think on their feet." "I know a few people," Amy said. She left the room, and Jake went back to examining the knives. Each one needed to be tested. He needed to know how they moved, how they felt, how far they could fly. In space, everything was different. No air resistance. No gravity pulling things down. A knife thrown in zero gravity would travel in a straight line forever unless it hit something. An hour later, Amy returned with 4 soldiers. Jake recognized their uniforms. Marines and specialists. "Commander Morrison," Amy said. "This is Corporal Danny Price. He is trained for zero-gravity combat and boarding actions." Danny was short and muscular. He had quick eyes that took in everything. He saluted Jake. "Sir." "At ease," Jake said. "You have done ship boarding operations?" "Yes, sir. 12 missions. All successful." "Good. Next." Amy pointed to a woman with blonde hair tied back tight. "This is Lieutenant Sophie Turner. She is a sniper. Best shot on the base." Sophie nodded. She did not salute. Jake liked that. Snipers were independent thinkers. Can you shoot anything other than a rifle? Jake asked. I can learn, sir, Sophie said. I am good with angles and distances. Give me a weapon, and I will make it work. Jake picked up a throwing knife and held it out to her. Try this. Sophie took the knife. She looked at the target dummy across the room. Without hesitation, she threw the knife. It spun through the air and stuck into the dummy's chest. Not perfect, but not bad for a first try. You will do, Jake said. Next. A thin man with glasses stepped forward. Private First Class Greg Sullivan, sir. Electronics and Computer Systems. Electronics and Computer Systems. Can you hack Krolek's security? Jake asked. I have never tried, sir, but I have studied their systems. I think I can do it. Think or no? Greg adjusted his glasses. No, sir. I can do it. The last soldier was a woman with dark skin and calm eyes. Sergeant Nicole Davis, sir. Combat medic. Also trained in hand-to-hand combat. What styles? Jake asked. 3 different martial arts, sir. I grew up doing judo. Learned boxing in the military. Picked up some Krav Maga from an instructor. At my last base. Jake nodded. This was good. These were the people he needed. All right, Jake said. You 5 have been selected for a special mission. Everything I tell you from this point forward is classified. You cannot talk about it with anyone outside this room. Understood? They all agreed. Jake picked up one of the combat knives. The Galactic Council banned projectile weapons. No more guns. No more railguns. But they did not ban these. Danny looked confused. Sir? With respect, the Kroleks have armor that can stop plasma fire. How is a knife going to help? End quote. Because they are not ready for it, Jake said. Think about how the Kroleks fight. They use energy shields and long-range weapons. They never let enemies get close. Their entire combat doctrine is based on keeping distance. Sophie was starting to understand. So if we can get close, their tactics fall apart. Exactly. And knives have other advantages. In space, they are silent. They do not show up on energy sensors. They do not create heat signatures. A blade is almost invisible until it is too late. Greg spoke up. But how do we get close enough? Their ships have security. Guards. Sensors. That is your job, Jake said. You will get us inside. The rest of us will handle the fighting. For the next 6 days, they trained. Jake taught them everything he knew about knife combat. How to hold a blade for different types of attacks. How to throw accurately in zero gravity. Where to strike on Krolek's armor to find the weak points. They practiced in the training room for hours every day. Jake showed them old human fighting techniques from Earth. Moves that soldiers used hundreds of years ago. Some of it felt strange at first. But slowly, they began to understand. Danny learned how to move in close quarters without making noise. Sophie practiced throwing knives until she could hit targets from 30 feet away. Greg studied Krolek's computer systems until he could crack their security codes in his sleep. Nicole learned where to strike to disable an enemy quickly, and Amy surprised them all. She was a quartermaster, not a frontline soldier. But she had been a Marine before taking her current job. Her knife work was fast and precise. You are coming with us, Jake told her after one training session. Amy looked surprised. Sir, I thought I was just helping with supplies. You are too good to stay behind. We need 6 people for this mission, not 5. On the 6th day, Captain Hayes arrived at Firebase Delta. She came to the training room and watched them practice. Jake demonstrated a technique where he used 2 knives at once, one for blocking and one for attacking. When they finished, Hayes pulled Jake aside. Command wants a report, she said. They are nervous. Some people think this knife idea is crazy. It will work, Jake said. How can you be sure? Jake pointed at his team. They were tired and sweating, but they moved with confidence now. They looked like warriors, because we have been training for nothing else. The Krolix trained to fight at range, with energy weapons. We train to get close and strike fast. When you specialize in one thing, you become better at it than anyone else. Hayes nodded. Command approved the mission. You leave tomorrow. The target is a Krolix battle station orbiting above us. Intelligence says Commander Vexthor is there. He is coordinating attacks on our supply lines. What is the objective? Eliminate Vexthor. Destroy their communications array. Get out without being detected if possible. Jake felt his heart beat faster. This was it. This was what they had been preparing for. We will be ready, he said. That night, Jake could not sleep. He lay in his bunk, thinking about the mission. So many things could go wrong. They could be detected on approach. The security codes might not work. The Krolix might be stronger than expected. But then he thought about his team. 6 people who had learned to trust each other completely. 6 people who had mastered weapons that the galaxy had forgotten about. He got up and went to the armory. The 47 knives were packed in cases, ready to be loaded onto the ship. Jake opened one case and pulled out his favorite blade. It was a simple combat knife with a black handle. He had used one like it during his first deployment years ago. The blade caught the light as he turned it. Sharp, clean, ready. The stealth pod was small and cramped. 6 people in space suits sat pressed together in the dark. Jake could hear his own breathing inside his helmet, slow and steady. Through the small window, he could see the Krolix battle station. It looked like a giant metal spider hanging in space above New Portland. Weapon platforms stuck out from its sides like legs. Red lights blinked along its surface. Danny was piloting the pod. His hands moved carefully over the controls. 200 meters, he whispered. Energy signatures are normal. They do not see us. The stealth pod had no engines running. They were drifting toward the station using momentum from their launch. No heat, no energy. Just a small piece of metal floating through space. To the Krolix sensors, they would look like debris. Greg was hunched over a small screen. His fingers moved quickly. Their security system is updating. I am matching the codes now. Give me 30 seconds. I'm Seam 17. I'm Seam 17. I'm Seam 17. Sophie sat next to Jake. She had a knife in each hand. Testing the weight. In zero gravity, throwing was different. You had to account for the spin and the pushback. She had practiced for hours and could now hit targets with accuracy. Nicole was checking medical supplies. Amy sat quietly with her eyes closed. Jake knew she was going over the mission plan in her head. They had memorized every corridor, every room, every guard station. 10 meters, Danny said, preparing to dock. There was a soft thump as the pod attached to the station's hull. Greg worked faster now. His screen showed lines of code scrolling past. Got it, he said. Their airlock is unlocked. Security cameras are on a loop. We have 12 minutes before their next shift change. Jake stood up as much as he could in the small space. Everyone ready? They all nodded. Each person carried 7 knives in different places. Wrist sheaths, boot knives. Throwing stars adapted from old Earth weapons. Every blade had been sharpened until it could split a hair. Remember, Jake said. No talking unless absolutely necessary. Hand signals only. We go in quiet. We leave quiet. If anyone raises an alarm, the mission is over. The airlock opened. They moved into the Krolix station one by one. The corridor was dark and empty. The walls were made of some kind of black metal. Pipes and cables ran along the ceiling. The air smelled strange, like chemicals and something burnt. Jake led them forward. He moved carefully, his boots making no sound on the metal floor. Behind him, the others followed in a line. The first guard was standing at an intersection. He was tall, maybe 7 feet. His armor was thick and covered in sharp edges. He held a plasma rifle loosely in his hands, clearly not expecting trouble. Jake signaled to Sophie. She nodded and pulled out a throwing knife. She aimed carefully, accounting for the distance and the angle. Then, she threw. The knife flew through the air in a perfect line. It hit the guard in the gap between his helmet and chest plate. The Krolix made a choking sound and started to fall. Danny was already moving. He caught the guard's body before it hit the ground. The plasma rifle clattered against the wall, but Danny caught that too. No noise. No alarm. They dragged the body into a side room and kept moving. The station was bigger than Jake expected. They passed through 3 corridors without seeing anyone else. Greg led them around the security checkpoints, using a map on his wrist screen. 2 guards ahead, he whispered. At the entrance to the main corridor. Jake looked around the corner. 2 Kralix warriors stood on either side of a large door. They were talking to each other in their language. It sounded like hissing and clicking. Jake pulled out 2 knives. He looked at Amy and held up 3 fingers. 3, 2, 1. Jake and Amy moved together. They came around the corner fast and low. The guards saw them and started to raise their weapons. Too slow. Jake's first knife caught one guard in the throat. His second knife went into the same guard's chest. Amy's blade found the other guard's eye slit in his helmet. Both Krolix dropped without firing a shot. 4 minutes until shift change, Greg warned. They moved faster now. The command center was close. They could hear voices inside. Krolix officers talking about ship movements and supply routes. Jake signaled for everyone to stop. He looked through a small window in the door. 6 Kralix inside. One of them was sitting at a large console. That had to be Vex Thor. The Kralix commander was bigger than the others. His armor was decorated with symbols. He was looking at a holographic display showing the planet below. Jake counted to 3 in his head. Then he signaled to Greg. The door opened fast. Jake and his team poured into the room. The Kralix were surprised. They reached for their weapons, but humans were already among them. Knives flashed in the dim light. Sophie threw 2 knives at once. Both hit their targets. Danny tackled one guard and drove a blade up under his helmet. Nicole moved like a dancer, spinning and striking with precise cuts. Vex Thor roared and grabbed for his plasma pistol. Jake was faster. He threw a knife that pinned the commander's hand to the console. Vex Thor tried to pull it free, but Jake was already there with a second blade. For New Portland, Jake said quietly. He drove the knife into the gap. In Vex Thor's neck armor, the Krolix commander's eyes went wide. He made a gurgling sound and then stopped moving. The whole fight lasted less than 20 seconds. 6 Krolix dead. No alarms raised. No shots fired. Greg, Jake said. The communications array. Do it now. Greg ran to the main console. His fingers flew over the controls. I am downloading their data first. Command will want to see this. Okay, done. Setting the overload now. Numbers appeared on the screen. A countdown. 5 minutes. Until the array would explode. Time to go, Jake said. They ran back through the corridors. Behind them, warning lights started to flash. The Kralix had found the bodies. Voices shouted in the distance. They know we are here, Amy said. Does not matter, Jake replied. We are almost out. 3 more guards appeared in front of them. These ones were ready. They raised their plasma rifles and fired. The team scattered. Energy bolts hit the walls, scorching the metal. Sophie threw a knife that caught one guard in the wrist. His rifle clattered to the floor. Danny charged the second guard. He moved so fast the Krolix could not track him. Danny's knife found the gap in the armor under the arm. The guard fell. The third guard was backing away, still firing. Nicole threw a knife that hit his weapon, knocking it aside. Amy followed up with a blade to the chest. They reached the airlock. Greg was already inside, starting the pod's systems. The others piled in behind him. Seal it, Jake ordered. Get us out of here. The airlock closed. Danny fired the pod's emergency thrusters. They shot away from the station just as explosions started inside. The communications array was tearing itself apart. Through the window, Jake watched the Kralik station. Fires were spreading. Ships were launching from the docking bays. But they were too late. The mission was complete. The Endeavor's medical bay was quiet. Nicole was checking everyone for injuries, while the rest of the team sat on exam tables. They were tired, but alive. The mission had been a success. Admiral Patricia Collins walked through the door. She looked at each of them carefully. Her expression was hard to read. "Commander Morrison," she said. Jake stood up and followed her out. He could feel the others watching him go. Were they in trouble? Had they broken some rule Jake did not know about? The Admiral's office was small but neat. Pictures of old Earth ships hung on the walls. Collins sat behind her desk and gestured for Jake to sit. 43 confirmed kills, she said. 1 high-value target eliminated. Complete destruction of their forward communications hub. And you did all of this without firing a single shot. Jake waited. He could not tell if she was angry or impressed. Collins smiled. It was small, but real. "Outstanding work, Commander. You and your team have done something incredible." Jake felt relief wash over him. "Thank you, ma'am. The team deserves all the credit." "The Kraliks are terrified," Collins continued. She pulled up a holographic display. It showed ship movements across several star systems. "Their entire fleet has pulled back from the outer rim. Our intelligence intercepted their communications. They are calling you the Silent Death." Jake felt uncomfortable with the name. "That was not the goal, Admiral. Maybe not. But you proved something important. You proved that humans can still fight effectively, even without projectile weapons." She changed the display. Now it showed 3 different alien fleets. "These 3 powers have withdrawn their ships from human space in the last 2 days. They saw what you did. They saw how you did it. And now, they are afraid." "Afraid of knives?" Jake asked. "Afraid of humans," Collins corrected. "They tried to take away your guns, thinking that would make you weak. Instead, you just found a different way to win. That scares them more than any weapon." Jake thought about this. They had only meant to complete the mission. To prove that the weapons ban would not stop humans from defending themselves. But the impact was bigger than he expected. "What happens now?" he asked. Collins stood and walked to the window. Outside, stars moved past as the Endeavor traveled through space. "The Galactic Council is meeting right now. They are arguing about what to do with humanity. Some want to punish us for using what they call primitive weapons. Others want to change the treaty. Will they give us back our projectile weapons? I do not know. But even if they do not, you have shown that it does not matter. Humans will fight with whatever they have. That is the real message you sent." "No." Collins turned back to face him. "Command wants more teams like yours. 50 teams, all trained in close-quarters combat. You are going to teach them everything you know." Jake nodded slowly. This made sense. If the weapons ban stayed in place, they needed more soldiers who could fight without guns. "When do we start?" he asked. "Tomorrow, but first, take the day off. You and your team earned it." Jake left the office and went back to the medical bay. The others were still there, talking quietly. They stopped when they saw him. "So?" Danny asked. "Are we in trouble?" "No," Jake said. "We are in charge of training. Command wants 50 more teams." Sophie whistled. "That is a lot of knife throwing." They laughed, but Jake could see they were proud. Over the next few days, word spread through the fleet. Soldiers talked about the mission in hushed voices. Some of the stories were exaggerated. Jake heard one rumor that said he had killed 50 Kraliks by himself with a single knife. But the truth was impressive enough. 6 humans had infiltrated an enemy station and completed their mission without being detected until the very end. That was the kind of operation that became legend. New recruits started arriving at Firebase Delta. Jake and his team spent their days teaching knife combat, stealth tactics, and close-quarters fighting. Some of the new soldiers learned quickly. Others struggled at first but improved with practice. Lieutenant Sophie Turner turned out to be a natural teacher. She worked with the recruits on throwing techniques, showing them how to account for zero gravity and distance. Her patience and precision helped many soldiers improve. Corporal Danny Price taught boarding operations. He showed them how to move silently in tight spaces, how to breach doors without making noise, and how to work as a team in hostile environments. Private Greg Sullivan ran classes on Kralix technology. He taught the recruits how to hack their security systems, how to bypass their locks, and how to avoid their sensors. Sergeant Nicole Davis handled medical training and hand-to-hand combat. She was tough, but fair, pushing the recruits to their limits while keeping them safe. Amy Cooper managed supplies and logistics. She made sure every team had the right equipment and that the knives were always sharp and ready. And Jake oversaw everything. He watched the recruits progress, corrected their mistakes, and pushed them to be better. He told them stories about the mission, about what worked, and what they could improve. He wanted them to understand not just the techniques, but the mindset. Fighting without guns is not about being primitive, he told one group of recruits. It is about being adaptable. The galaxy thought they could control us by banning our weapons, but they cannot ban our creativity. They cannot ban our determination. One young soldier raised her hand. Her name was Private Lisa Martinez. Sir, what if they ban knives too? Jake smiled. Then we use something else. Humans have been fighting for survival since before we had metal tools. We used rocks and sticks and our bare hands. You cannot ban human ingenuity. The recruits seemed to understand. This was about more than just knives. It was about proving that humanity would not be controlled or limited by others. 6 weeks after the mission, Admiral Collins called Jake back to her office. This time, she had a guest. Ambassador Charles Freeman was there, sitting in a chair and looking tired. Commander Morrison, Freeman said, I have been at the Galactic Council for the past month. They finally made a decision. What decision, sir? They are amending the weapons treaty. Limited use of projectile weapons will be allowed again under specific circumstances. Freeman paused. More importantly, humanity has been given a seat on the Council's Military Affairs Committee. We will have a voice in future decisions. Jake felt a surge of pride. This was what they had fought for. Not just the right to use weapons, but the right to be heard. That is good news, sir, Jake said. It is, Freeman agreed. But it only happened because of you and your team. You showed the Council that humanity cannot be dismissed or controlled. You showed them that we will find a way to defend ourselves, no matter what rules they make. Collins spoke up. There is more. The Council wants a demonstration. They want to see how human close-quarters tactics can be integrated into standard galactic military doctrine. Jake raised an eyebrow. They want us to teach aliens how to fight with knives? Among other things, Collins said. Think of it as cultural exchange. They teach us their energy weapon techniques. We teach them our methods. Jake thought about this. It was strange to imagine aliens learning human combat styles, but it also made sense. If the galaxy was going to work together, they needed to learn from each other. When do we start? Jake asked. In 2 weeks, Freeman said. We will be hosting mixed species units here at Firebase Delta. You and your team will be the instructors. After the meeting, Jake gathered his team. He told them about the new assignment. Their reactions were mixed. Teaching aliens? Danny said. That should be interesting. Sophie looked thoughtful. Do you think they can learn? I mean, they have been using energy weapons for centuries. This will be completely different for them. They will learn, Jake said. The same way we learned. Practice and determination. Nicole nodded. It will be good to share knowledge. Maybe we can learn some. The aliens arrived at Firebase Delta in small groups over 3 days. Jake watched from the landing pad as ships from different worlds touched down. Each species looked completely different from the others. The Viridians were tall and thin, with blue skin and large black eyes. They moved gracefully, almost floating across the ground. The Tarkans were short and heavily built, covered in thick scales. The Minari had 4 arms and could change the color of their skin. And then there were the Kralliks. Jake felt his muscles tense when he saw them. 3 Kralliks warriors walked down the ramp of their transport. They were huge, just like the ones he had fought on the battle station. But these ones were here to learn, not to fight. Captain Linda Hayes stood next to Jake. She saw his reaction. "Can you work with them?" she asked quietly. Jake took a deep breath. "Yes, ma'am. We are all on the same side now." The first week was difficult. The aliens did not understand why they needed to learn knife combat. They had energy weapons that could kill from far away. Why would they want to get close to an enemy? Jake gathered all the alien soldiers in the main training hall. There were about 30 of them. They stood in groups by species, not mixing with each other. "I know what you are thinking," Jake said. His voice echoed in the large room. "You think this training is useless. You think knives are primitive weapons for primitive people." Some of the aliens shifted uncomfortably. A Viridian soldier raised his hand. His name was Talron, and he spoke through a translator device. "With respect, Commander, our weapons can destroy a target from 3 kilometers away. Why would we ever need to be close enough to use a blade?" Jake smiled. He had expected this question. "Sophie, demonstration, please." Sophie stepped forward. She had a practice knife in her hand. At the other end of the room, there was a combat drone. It was small and fast, designed to simulate an enemy in training. "Activate the drone," Jake ordered. The drone powered up. Its sensors locked onto Sophie. It started flying toward her, moving quickly and changing direction to avoid being hit. Sophie stood still. She waited until the drone was 20 feet away. Then, her arm moved. The practice knife flew through the air and stuck into the drone's sensor array. The machine wobbled and crashed to the floor. "Your energy weapons show up on sensors," Jake said. "They create heat signatures. They make noise. A blade does none of these things. It is silent. It is invisible to most scanners. And at close range, it is just as deadly as any plasma rifle." The aliens looked at each other. Talron nodded slowly. "I see. You are teaching us stealth tactics." "Exactly," Jake said. "There are situations where silence is more important than power. That is when these skills matter." The training began in earnest after that. Jake and his team split the aliens into smaller groups. Each group learned different skills based on their physical abilities. The Viridians were naturally graceful. They learned throwing techniques quickly. Their long arms gave them excellent reach, and they could hit targets from impressive distances. The Tarkans were strong but slow. Jake taught them defensive techniques: how to use a blade to block attacks, how to get close to an enemy and use their weight as a weapon. The Minari were fascinating. With 4 arms, they could hold multiple knives at once. Nicole worked with them on a fighting style that used all 4 limbs. It was like watching a deadly dance. The Kralliks were the hardest to teach. They were used to being the strongest warriors in any fight. The idea of using small knives felt wrong to them. Jake understood their pride. He had seen it on the battle station. One Kralliks warrior named Korval was particularly resistant. He stood with his arms crossed during training, refusing to participate. "This is beneath me," Korval said. His voice was deep and rough. "I am a warrior of the Kralliks Empire. I do not need human weapons." Quote, Jake walked over to him. He was much smaller than the Kralliks, but he did not back down. "You are right," Jake said. "You are a great warrior. Your people have won many battles. But you lost one recently. Do you know why? Corval's eyes narrowed. We were betrayed. Your people used dishonorable tactics. We used effective tactics, Jake corrected. Your commander thought his station was safe. He thought humans were weak without their guns. He was wrong. And he died because of that mistake. The other Kralix warriors were watching now. The whole training hall had gone quiet. Pride is good, Jake continued. But pride without adaptation is just stupidity. The galaxy is changing. New threats are coming. If you refuse to learn new skills, you will die. Is that what you want? Jake, Calaking, Jake Pride has a simple. Well, son, that's for more. Corval stared at Jake for a long moment. Then, slowly, he uncrossed his arms. Show me, he said. Jake spent the next hour teaching Corval personally. The Kralix warrior was a quick learner, once he decided to try. His strength and reach made him dangerous with a blade. By the end of the session, Corval was nodding with approval. This has value, he admitted. I did not see it before, but I see it now. After that, the other Kralix warriors participated fully. They practiced with intensity, determined to master these new skills. 3 weeks into the training, Admiral Collins arrived with more news. She gathered everyone in the training hall, aliens and humans together. I have an announcement, she said. The Galactic Council has officially approved the Mixed Species Combat Training Program. What you are doing here will become standard across the fleet. Humans will teach close-quarters combat. Other species will teach their specialties. We are building something new. A truly united military force. The aliens made various sounds of approval. The Viridians hummed. The Tarkons growled. The Minari clicked their mandibles. There is more, Collins continued. We have received intelligence about a new threat. A species called the Void Stalkers has been attacking ships on the far edge of the galaxy. They use stealth technology. They board vessels and kill everyone on board. Standard weapons are not effective against them. Jake felt a chill. This was exactly the kind of enemy that knife combat was designed for. Commander Morrison, Collins said. Command wants your team to investigate. You will take a mixed species unit with you. Consider it a field test of the new training program. That night, Jake met with his original team. They sat in the common area, drinking coffee and talking about the mission. Void Stalkers, Danny said. I have heard rumors about them. Ships disappear. No survivors. No evidence left behind. 18. 19 with remender. They sound like us, Sophie observed. Silent killers who strike fast and disappear. That is what worries me, Jake admitted. We taught the galaxy how to fight at close range. What if these Void Stalkers are better at it than we are? Nicole set down her cup. Amy nodded. And we will not be alone. We have allies now. The Viridians are skilled. The Kralix are strong. The Minari are fast. Together, we are stronger than any of us alone. Jake looked at his team. They had been through so much together. They had proven that humans could fight without guns. They had earned the respect of the galaxy. Now, they faced a new challenge. All right, Jake said. We leave in 3 days. Choose your mixed species unit carefully. We need soldiers who work well together and can think on their feet. Over the next few days, they selected their team. Talron the Viridian would come as their scout. Corval the Kralix would provide heavy combat support. A Minari soldier named Zix Ara would handle technical work, using her 4 arms to operate multiple systems at once. They trained together, learning each other's strengths and weaknesses. It was strange at first. Humans and aliens working side by side. But slowly, they became a team. On the night before departure, Jake stood on the landing pad, looking up at the stars. So many worlds out there. So many species. And somewhere, In that darkness, the Void Stalkers were waiting. Captain Hayes joined him. They stood in silence for a while. "Do you ever miss the old days?" she asked. "When it was just humans against the galaxy?" Jake thought about it. Sometimes. It was simpler. But this is better. We are not alone anymore. We have allies. We have friends. And enemies, Hayes added. Always, Jake agreed. But that is okay. Having enemies means you stand for something. It means you matter. Hayes smiled. The council is meeting again. The journey to the far edge took 12 days. Jake spent most of that time training with the mixed species team. They practiced in the cargo bay, running drills and learning to move as one unit. Talron was proving to be an excellent scout. His Viridian senses could detect movement and heat signatures that humans missed. He moved silently, almost like a shadow. Corval was exactly what they needed for heavy combat. His strength was incredible. He could bend metal with his bare hands and throw knives with enough force to punch through thick armor. But more importantly, he had learned patience. He no longer rushed into fights. He waited for the right moment. Zixara was brilliant with technology. Her forearms allowed her to work on multiple systems at once. She could hack a computer while monitoring sensors and preparing weapons, all at the same time. She also had a sharp sense of humor that kept morale high during the long journey. Sophie and Talron spent hours together, comparing throwing techniques. It turned out that Viridian and human methods were similar in many ways. They learned from each other, creating new techniques that combined both styles. Danny trained with Corval in zero-gravity combat. The Kralix warrior was not used to fighting without gravity, but he learned quickly. His size, which was sometimes a disadvantage in tight spaces, became an advantage in zero-G. He could use his mass to pin enemies or knock them aside. Greg and Zixara worked on understanding Voidstalker technology. They had very little information to go on. A few sensor readings from attacked ships, some fragmentary reports from the few survivors who had escaped. They used some kind of cloaking device, Greg explained during a briefing. Not energy shields like the Kralix. Something different. They absorb light and energy instead of deflecting it. Can we detect them? Jake asked. Maybe, Zixara said. She gestured with two of her hands while her other two worked on a datapad. I am designing a new sensor configuration. It looks for absences rather than presences, places where light and energy should be, but are not. How long until it is ready? It is ready now, she said, her skin changing to a proud purple color. I installed it. While we were talking, Jake smiled. Having aliens on the team was teaching him new things every day. On the 13th day, they reached the far edge. This was the frontier of known space. Beyond this point, there were no colonies, no stations, just empty darkness and unexplored systems. The ship's sensors picked up a distress signal almost immediately. It was faint and broken up, but the message was clear. A cargo vessel was under attack. Set course, Jake ordered. Maximum speed. T. They arrived 20 minutes later. The cargo ship was drifting in space. Its engines were dark. No life signs on sensors. Jake felt a familiar tension in his chest. This was what the Voidstalkers did. They attacked quickly and left no trace. Scan for anomalies, Jake said. Zixara worked her sensors. Her skin flickered between different colors as she concentrated. Suddenly, she stopped. There. 300 meters off our port side. Something is blocking the starlight. Very small. About the size of our pod. That is them, Jake said. They are watching us. Should we fire? Danny asked. No, we need information. If we destroy their ship, we learn nothing. Jake thought quickly. Zixara, can you fake a system failure? Make us look damaged? Of course, she said. Her fingers moved across her controls. The ship's lights flickered. Alarms started blaring. To any outside observer, it would look like they were having a serious malfunction. Now we wait, Jake said. If they are like us, they will come to investigate. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then Talron spoke up, his voice calm. Movement. They are approaching. Preparing to dock. Everyone to positions, Jake ordered. Remember the plan. We let them board. We observe. Then we capture one alive if possible. The team moved to their hiding spots. They had practiced this scenario many times during the journey. Each person knew exactly where to be and what to do. There was a soft clang as something attached to their hull. Then, silence. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Slow and steady. The airlock opened. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, Jake saw movement. It was subtle, like watching heat shimmer on a hot day. The Void Stalkers were coming through. They were roughly humanoid in shape, but smaller. Maybe 4 feet tall. They moved on 2 legs, but had long arms that reached almost to the ground. And they were nearly invisible. Their bodies seemed to absorb the light around them, making them look like holes in reality. 3 Void Stalkers entered the ship. They spread out, examining the consoles and equipment. One of them moved right past Sophie's hiding spot, without seeing her. Their stealth technology was impressive, but it was not perfect. Jake could see the faint outlines if he concentrated. He gave the signal, a simple hand gesture that meant, now. The team moved as one. Sophie's knife flew through the air and caught one Void Stalker in the leg. The creature made a high-pitched sound and became visible for a moment. Its skin was black and seemed to ripple like water. Korval grabbed another Void Stalker before it could react. The Kralix warrior's strength was overwhelming. He pinned the creature to the floor. With one hand, the third Void Stalker tried to run. Talron was faster. The Viridian's long legs covered the distance in seconds. He struck with the blunt side of his blade. Not killing, but stunning. In less than 10 seconds, all 3 intruders were captured. They tried to activate their cloaking again, but Zixara had already jammed the frequency. They became fully visible, writhing and clicking in frustration. Nicole moved forward with medical restraints. She worked carefully, knowing that injured prisoners would be useless for interrogation. Soon, all 3 Void Stalkers were secure and sedated. Good work, Jake said. Zixara, scan their ship. I want to know everything about it. Over the next hour, they learned a great deal. The Void Stalkers were raiders from a distant system. They used hit-and-run tactics, stealing supplies and technology from other species. Their cloaking devices were biological, part of their natural skin. But the devices could be jammed or overwhelmed with the right frequencies. Greg examined their weapons. They were crude but effective. Sharp blades attached to their long arms. No guns, no energy weapons. They fought exactly like Jake's team did, up close and personal. They are like us, Sophie said. Silent killers who get close and strike fast. Not anymore, Jake replied. Now we know how to detect them, how to fight them. They are not unstoppable. They turned the 3 prisoners over to the authorities at the nearest station. The information they provided helped other ships defend against Voidstalker attacks. Within weeks, the raids stopped. The Void Stalkers realized they could no longer operate with impunity. Admiral Collins called Jake when they returned to Firebase Delta. She appeared on the communication screen with a satisfied expression. Excellent work, Commander. You have neutralized a major threat. The Council is extremely pleased. Thank you, ma'am. The mixed species team worked perfectly. Everyone contributed. That is what I wanted to hear, Collins said. This proves that our new approach is correct. Different species working together are stronger than any species alone. She paused, then continued. There is going to be a ceremony. The Council wants to recognize your achievements formally. All of you. Humans and aliens together. The ceremony took place 2 weeks later on the Council's neutral station. It was the first time Jake had been there. The station was massive. Built to accommodate thousands of different species, Jake stood with his team on a large platform. Humans and aliens side by side. Talron, Korval, Zixara, Sophie, Danny, Greg, Nicole, and Amy. They had become more than a team. They had become friends. The council elder spoke, his energy form glowing brightly. You have shown us something important. You have shown us that diversity is strength, that different ways of thinking and fighting can work together to create something greater than the sum of parts. Ambassador Charles Freeman stepped forward to accept recognition on behalf of humanity. He shook hands with the alien representatives. It was a symbolic gesture, one that meant humanity was truly part of the galactic community now. After the ceremony, Jake and his team gathered in one of the station's observation lounges. They looked out at the stars, each lost in their own thoughts. What do you think comes next? Amy asked. Jake considered the question. More training, more missions, more challenges. The galaxy is a big place. There will always be something. Good, Korval rumbled. I have grown fond of this knife fighting. It has honor. I will teach it to other Kraliks when I return home. And I will teach it to the Viridians, Talron added. We have much to learn from humans. And much to teach, as well. Zixara's skin turned a happy yellow color. I am already designing new training programs. We can combine human stealth with Viridian sensors and Kralik's strength. Imagine what we could accomplish. Jake smiled. This was bigger than one mission or one team. They had started something that would change the galaxy. Different species, learning from each other. Sharing knowledge. Building trust. Sophie raised her drink. To adaptation. To survival. To humans who refuse to quit. And to our new friends, Danny added, who learned that humans are not so bad after all. They all drank to that. Human coffee and alien beverages, mixed in a toast, to cooperation and friendship. Later that night, Jake stood alone in his quarters on the Endeavor. He thought about how far they had come. The Council had tried to control humanity by banning their weapons. But humans had adapted. They had found new ways to fight. New ways to win. And in the process, they had earned the respect of the galaxy. They had made allies. They had proven that humanity belonged among the stars. Jake pulled out his combat knife. The same one he had carried on the mission to the Kralik station. The blade was worn but still sharp. It had seen action. Saved lives. Changed history. He thought about his grandfather again. The old man would have been proud. He had taught Jake that survival was about more than strength or weapons. It was about thinking clearly. Adapting quickly. Never giving up. Those lessons had served Jake well. They had served all of humanity well. There would be more challenges ahead. More enemies. More obstacles. But Jake was not worried. Humans had proven they could handle anything the galaxy threw at them. With guns or without guns. With advanced technology or simple blades. It did not matter what tools they had. What mattered was the spirit behind those tools. The determination. The creativity. The refusal to be defeated. The galaxy had learned that lesson. They had banned projectiles, so Jake brought 47 knives. And with those knives, he had changed everything. Now humanity stood as an equal among the stars. Respected, valued, free. Jake put the knife away and looked out at the stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, he could rest. The mission was complete. The war was won, not with overwhelming force, but with intelligence and adaptation. That was the human way. That was why they survived. That was why they would always survive. No matter what the galaxy tried to take away, humans would find another way, another tool, another path to victory. They had proven it once. They would prove it again and again, for as long as humanity reached for the stars. XT Week. They are going to formally recognize human contributions to galactic security. We went from being restricted and controlled to being respected and valued. You did that, Jake. You and your team. We just proved what humans have always known, Jake said. You can take away our tools, but you cannot take away our will to survive. You can ban our weapons, but you cannot ban our creativity. Humans adapt. Humans overcome. That is who we are. The next morning, the mixed species team boarded their ship. It was a new design, built to incorporate technology from multiple worlds. Human stealth systems, Viridian sensors, Kralix shields, Minari engines. Jake sat in the captain's chair and looked at his crew. Humans and aliens. Warriors from different worlds. United by common purpose. Set course for the far edge, he ordered. Let us go find these void stalkers and show them what we have learned. The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward the unknown. Jake felt ready. Whatever they found out there, they would face it together. And if the void stalkers thought they could terrorize the galaxy unchallenged, they were about to learn a hard lesson. Humanity was no longer alone. And together, the species of the galaxy were unstoppable. Thing from them, too. Greg adjusted his glasses. I hope they have good security protocols. The last thing we need is someone stealing our techniques and using them against us. That is a risk, Jake admitted. But isolation is a bigger risk. If we want to be part of the galactic community, we need to share. We need to show that we are not just warriors, but teachers and allies too. They spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the mixed species training. They developed lesson plans, set up training areas, and gathered equipment. It would be the start of something new, something that could change how the entire galaxy approached warfare. Jake thought about how far they had come. A few months ago, they were told they could not use guns anymore. Now they were teaching the galaxy new ways to fight. It was strange how things worked out, but one thing remained clear. Humanity would never stop adapting, never stop finding new solutions. That was what made them special. That was what made them survivors. Is everyone okay? Nicole asked. They checked each other. A few bruises. Some torn suit fabric. But no serious injuries. They had gone into a heavily guarded enemy station and come out alive. Sophie started laughing. It was a strange sound in the cramped pod. Then Danny joined in. Soon they were all laughing, even Jake. Did that really just work? Greg asked. It worked, Jake said. We just proved that humans do not need guns to be dangerous. The pod raced toward the Endeavor. Behind them, the Kralix station was in chaos. They would be talking about this for years, how 6 humans with nothing but knives had killed their commander and destroyed their communications. Jake pulled out his combat knife and looked at it. The blade was clean, sharp, ready for the next mission. He smiled. The galaxy had tried to take away humanity's weapons. They had tried to make humans weak, but they had forgotten something important. Humans had been warriors for thousands of years before guns were invented. They knew how to fight with anything. Rocks, sticks, knives, bare hands. You could take away the tools, but you could not take away the will to survive. The Kralix had learned that lesson today. Soon, the rest of the galaxy would learn it too. Jake thought about his grandfather again. The old man had taught him to hunt in the mountains of Montana. He always said that the best hunters were patient and quiet. They did not rush. They did not make noise. They waited for the right moment and then struck fast. That was what they would do tomorrow. The Kralix thought humans were weak without their guns. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Jake put the knife back in the case and closed it. Tomorrow, the galaxy would see what humans could do. With nothing but steel and determination, he went back to his bunk and finally fell asleep, dreaming of the mission ahead. Jake looked at her directly. Tell them it is for a special operation. Tell them Commander Morrison is trying something new. If they ask more questions, have them contact Captain Hayes on the Endeavor. Amy nodded slowly. She still looked confused, but she was a good soldier. How many knives do you need? Our sir? Jake thought for a moment. He would need variety. Different blades for different situations. Some for throwing. Some for close fighting. Some small enough to hide. Some big enough to intimidate. 47, he said. 47 different knives. Amy's eyes went wide, but she did not argue. She just pulled out her data pad and started making notes. Jake smiled. This was going to work. It had to work. Because if it did not, the Kralliks would push deeper into human space, and there would be nothing to stop them. The war had changed, but war never really changed. Men had been killing each other with sharp metal for thousands of years before guns were invented. Now, it was time to remember those old lessons. The Kralliks wanted a fight. Jake Morrison was going to give them one they would never forget.